Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented this week by the Maryland Jockey Club. It's a big weekend at Laurel, the Winter Carnival. We'll tell you all about it coming up. Plus, we're going to talk some Kentucky Derby. But first, Ray, I'd like to get into this lawsuit that's been filed against Zayat Stables by an investment group called MGG. They've also named other defendants, people who bought breeding rights or horses from Zayat after this loan was given to him by MGG, and those horses and breeding rights were supposed to be collateral. This is a big mess. Try and sort it out quickly for us.
Yeah, it is a very complicated mess, as you said, and there's quite a few unhappy people in the horse business as a result of the amended complaint filed by MGG Investment Group, which named not only Zayat individually, but his family members who had previously owned some of the lifetime breeding rights to American Pharoah, and to, as you said, people who bought horses either privately from Zayat Stables, or in some cases, people who bought horses at a sale that was consigned by someone who had bought a horse from Zayat Stables. So even, two links down the chain, somebody has been named in the lawsuit because I think essentially MGG is saying, you have that horse. Legally, I'm entitled to have possession of that horse because it was pledged as collateral for this loan. So even though you did nothing wrong, you have the horse that is rightfully mine. I think that's what their argument is.
Yeah, I think that's what the argument is, and I think my takeaway here is buyer beware. Just a reminder of caveat emptor, because in the horse business, you never know. You have to do your homework when you're buying a horse or a breeding right. And sometimes it's hard to find this information, and I'm sure some of these people did their due diligence and they still feel like they're getting slapped in the face here because they didn't know, or maybe some of them did, I don't know. But the ones that didn't, I don't know whether they did their homework or not, or whether they're just getting a bad deal here. But I do think it is a kind of a lesson, a reminder when you're going into these deals to peek behind the curtain and see if there are any liens involved.
Yeah, liens are not uncommon on horses that are sold. Usually, it's for the stud fees for breeding stock. So it's something that a lot of buyers are aware of. It's the responsibility is with the consignor to communicate with the owner of the horse, find out if there's any liens, and if there are, to make sure that the sale company and the buyers know about it. So it's, this is a mess. It involves a lot of tentacles, but one of the interesting things about it, as a result of some of the exhibits that are in the court case file, we've been able to look at the sale contract between Zayat Stables and Coolmore. They purchased American Pharoah, the subsequent Triple Crown winner, before he was even named the champion 2-year-old, and the sale price was $8 million. Well, as a result of incentives, by the end of the year, after he won the Breeders' Cup Classic, the sale price was $23 million. So it was a really interesting thing to be able to look at the contract, see what certain races were worth, and so on.
We rarely get a chance to see the details of these contracts, and so it was enlightening to see behind the scenes. For example, there were bonuses for winning the Triple Crown races, the Haskell, the Breeders' Cup Classic. He did all of that. He missed out on a bonus, losing the Travers. But that all added up, plus year-end honors, Eclipse Awards. It's very much like a professional athlete's contract where you get bonuses, incentives for reaching certain statistical marks or winning honors and that kind of thing. On the other hand, it also revealed some of the more disappointing stuff that goes on with these deals, like, for example, the idea that they came to an agreement early in American Pharoah's 3-year-old year that he would not run as a 4-year-old. That's one of those issues in the business we kind of lament. And then another one was, if he had lost the Preakness, he wasn't going to run in the Belmont. Even if he lost a nose and they had a rivalry between the Derby and the Preakness winner, we weren't going to see American Pharoah no matter what in the Belmont.
Yeah, I'd never heard of such a contract clause before, and so it makes you wonder when trainers are saying after a race, well, he's going to go in this race or he's not going to go in that race or whatever. you're wondering how much of this is based on what the trainer thinks what's best for the horse or what's best for the game versus what's in the contract if that horse has a stallion deal. And I dare say there are some, 3-year-olds out there now that we probably don't even know about that have stallion contracts on them. Let's remember, this was January before the horse had even run as a 3-year-old. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to run as a 4-year-old. So one of the things that makes me wonder how many of the horses that are out there currently on the road to the Kentucky Derby already have stallion deals, already have certain races that are in the contract that might increase their sale price, might even say, like in the American Pharoah deal, if you win the Kentucky Derby and lose the Preakness, you can't run in the Belmont. It makes you wonder.
Well, it was revealing, to say the least, to get a peek behind what was going on with that deal. All right, let's move on to talk about some of the 3-year-olds that we've seen so far this year on the road to the Kentucky Derby. We haven't gotten to the big point races yet, but we've seen some of the top contenders already. Who has stood out to you?
Well, there's one on each coast for me. One is sort of an old school type of horse, and that's Tiz the Law. Very impressive 2-year-old, skipped the Breeders' Cup. That was on purpose. They just said, you know what? We're going to give the horse a break. We're not going to send him to the West Coast for the Breeders' Cup. Brought him back, and I really liked his race in the Holy Bull. I didn't necessarily like the ride he got because, he got down on the inside. The rider had to really, really kind of take a strong hold of him to swing him to the outside and win. I thought it was a good race, and I think he got something out of it. The other horse for me is on the West Coast and one of the Baffert Brigade, and that's Authentic. He won the Sham Stakes in his second start on January 4, like a really good horse. Now, down the stretch, he was acting like a really bad boy. I mean, the antics he showed, it looked like he wanted to jump over the rail. I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but this is a horse with a lot of talent. And I know that Baffert has talked about putting earplugs in him for his next start, which I think is going to be the San Felipe at Santa Anita next month. This is a horse with a lot of talent. He's had some good work since that Sham Stakes win, and I think he's going to be tough to beat in San Felipe.
I agree with you on both counts. I like both of those horses. I thought Authentic, while he looked green, he didn't look tired. He wasn't weaving in the stretch because he was tired. He looked like he had plenty left in the tank. It's just he was weaving like a green horse does sometimes. And Tiz the Law, the word I would use for his Holy Bull was professional. You mentioned some of the trouble he had. He just looked like a professional horse. So I think he's definitely a top contender. I'm going to throw a couple more out there. Sol Volante was really impressive to me visually on Saturday in the Sam F. Davis Stakes. I mean, he blew by Independence Hall, who I still think is a really good horse. I thought he ran a decent race there, and I still think he has a lot of promise, but Sol Volante just went right by him. He's by Caraconte, a very interesting Kentucky Derby prospect because you don't get a lot of those foreign sires influencing, and we had Animal Kingdom a few years ago. He kind of reminds me of that because Sol Volante has run on turf as well and has a huge closing kick on both dirt and turf. So I think he is a serious player going forward. And the other one is Nadal. We haven't seen him stretch out yet. He's only had a couple of sprints. And it's interesting, in the last 50 years or so, only 2 horses that went into March without having gone beyond 7 furlongs won the Kentucky Derby. Both of them happened to be trained by Bob Baffert, Justify and Silver Charm, and Nadal is trained by Bob Baffert. So he's interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of those statistics and things, I think you can almost throw history out the window now as far as Derby preps. It really comes down to who's going to be the best horse on the first Saturday in May. It used to be you need so many preps. Now it's like 2 preps seems to be the norm, or 3 at the most. And the 7 furlong thing, I don't know if that's a legit stat or not, but it is interesting. And I'm wondering, have we seen the Kentucky Derby yet? We've got Dennis's Moment coming up soon. We've got horses racing this weekend at the fairgrounds that have an eye on the Derby Road. So I think we have, actually. I mean, I think the 2 I've got are pretty solid, and I'll be interested to see what these other horses do as these other prep races start start to follow.
It's pretty interesting if you look back in recent times, the Kentucky Derby Future Wager Pool 2. It's been a mixture of sometimes they don't the eventual winner of the Kentucky Derby is not in there as an individual interest. That's happened several times in the last few years, and then other times they are listed there. So if you look at this year's wager, not a lot of movement actually. Nadal is the one that took the most money, I think. And his race was over after the pool closed, so keep an eye on that. All right, let us know what you think. We have a poll on this. Of the horses we've seen, the top contenders we've seen so far this year, who do you think is the most likely winner of the Kentucky Derby? Let us know at PaulickReport.com. Ray, this weekend is huge at Laurel Park. Winter Carnival, there's 5 stakes on Saturday worth $800,000.
Yeah, it's Laurel's started this tradition, this Winter Carnival, and it's great to have a big stakes card in the winter, because in the Northeast, you think of winter racing as sort of the run of the mill racing, but to have a big day like this in February is really kind of cool. And there's some good horses that are going to be competing. I'll be interested to see Ferenz Fire, for example, how he looks in the General George, and the whole card is a good card.
Yeah, and actually the weather doesn't look too bad throughout the weekend, because it does go through Monday, President's Day, and there's a lot of stuff on track with prizes and giveaways and stuff like that. So people who are going to the races, in addition to people who will be watching and betting on simulcast. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.